You're live.
Welcome to this edition of the YAHOWAH blog. We're here in our Rainbow studio, which means it's another episode of Appalling Twistianity. We had a bit of a glitch there with one of the many devices here down in our studio that was actually playing some audio, which would have had an interesting feedback experience. So excuse the rough start. We're returning to what is Twistianity Volume 1. I have written 5 books specifically designed to expose the Christian New Testament as an utter and complete fraud. If that is a surprise to you, then it is important that you know that I have undertaken the most comprehensive deconstruction of Christianity ever written. I have proven beyond any doubt that the authors of the Christian New Testament, beginning with Paul, who wrote the first 14 books of the Christian New Testament. In fact, there were no Gospels. Nothing of the Christian New Testament existed other than Paul's 14 letters prior to 75 CE. He wrote his first in 52. He died in 66, and his publicist and spiritual healer wrote the book of Acts, which is the story of Paul, in 75. And one of his accolades, Mark, wrote the Gospel according to Paul in 75 as well. And then the book of Luke, who, like Mark, was not an eyewitness to any of these things, wasn't even in proximity to when any of these things transpired, may not have even been alive at the time, wrote Luke based upon plagiarizing Mark. And so this is really the essence of the Christian New Testament. And I go through it systematically, including demonstrating the vast changes in manuscripts from the oldest, which there are 69 that date to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, even early 4th century, before the rise of Eusebius and Constantine. Eusebius was Constantine's propagandist, very much like Luke was Paul's propagandist. And from that point on, there is really very little consistency or credibility in the condition of the text of the Christian New Testament. And prior to that time, of those 69 manuscripts, all of which have been unearthed from Alexandria area in Egypt, they differ not only widely among themselves, but there are over 300,000 known variances between these earliest manuscripts and the basis of the Christian New Testament today. And that's alarming, since there's only 184,000 words and 300,000 known variations. So it is a very poorly kept text. It is filled with contradictions, both of history of that time and previously. It is in every citation where Yahweh's testimony, that's God's testimony, is recorded in the Christian New Testament, it is pulled out of context and grossly misrepresented. There isn't a single accurate citation from the Torah, prophets, and Psalms within the Christian New Testament. And in Paul's letters, there's not even a single reference to anything this alleged gospel Jesus individual said. Quite frankly, for 2 reasons. One, there wasn't a single gospel written while Paul was writing his letters. And second, it is Paul that created the myth of Jesus. He never existed. And it's obvious that he never existed. All Jesus is a crude counterfeit of David, while mixing in a heavy dose of Dionysus. Dionysus provides the myth that God became a man, and the myth of dying and resurrecting gods comes directly from Dionysus. All the rest of it, the Messiah, the Son of God, the crucifixion story, all of that comes directly from the promises that Yahweh made to his beloved Son, Doe to David and does not apply to anyone else, including the mythical figure of Jesus. So what I have done in the 5 volumes of Twistianity is I took what Paul said and either negated it by comparing it to what Yahweh said in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, which is lethal to Christianity because it claims that it derives its entire legitimacy from the God of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and yet Paul and the other New Testament writers contradict God's testimony routinely and annul his positions on every issue. Or I compare what Paul said to the actual history of the time, or I compare what Paul said to other things Paul said, or I compare what Paul said to what is alleged to have come from Gospel Jesus later. And in making these comparisons, I prove many thousands of times over that Christianity is fraudulent, that there was no Jesus Christ, that Paul was a demon-possessed liar, and that there was not a single eyewitness account of anything that actually transpired that is contained in the book that is now called the New Testament, and it is a sore thumb. It is completely out of sync with everything that was said previously, and therefore the only way for it to be true is for God to have been a liar in everything else he said. And if God's a liar regarding everything else he said, then he certainly can't be trusted as it relates to the New Testament. Now, the other, of course, basic answer to all of this is beyond recognizing that there is a 0% possibility that God would have deployed a man who acknowledged that he was a sexual pervert, who was out killing people who had any affinity with him, who was trained by the rabbis, who was murderous, who admitted that he was demon possessed, that God would have chosen a man like this, not only to contradict everything he said, but to come up with an entirely different plan based upon the gospel of Paul. I, Paul, say. But beyond all of that, there is a 0% possibility that God was a man. God's not a man. He's never been a man. He will never be a man. God created the universe and humankind on this planet, but that means God is infinitely larger than the universe he created and thus infinitely larger than a man. So, God is not a man. If your God is no bigger than a man, your God isn't God. Second of all, the notion that men can kill God is ludicrous. And in Christianity, it is alleged that Jews who had no authority in Roman-occupied Judea killed the Christian God. Not possible. Sorry. And if your thinking is that you have proved that you're divine by an empty tomb, then you simply haven't read the story of what Dowd said he was going to do as the Passover lamb in fulfilling Passover, because the body of the Passover lamb, after fulfilling Passover, is incinerated that evening, meaning that the tomb would be empty. But it was Dowd's body that was placed there. Sorry. And if you think that body then is going to be resurrected, you haven't been paying attention, because the Passover lamb never comes back to life. Read the story. Become familiar with what God is saying. It's it's just absurd. And then to claim bodily resurrection is to jump back in time to the pharaohs. I mean, they spent fortunes for their bodily resurrection. That's the whole concept of mummies and those fancy tombs with boats and scrolls from the Book of the Dead and all sorts of servants and every manner of food and everything to nourish the physical body, which was being protected for the afterlife. It is ludicrous. All of those mummies, yeah, guess what? Their bodies are still here. You know, the idea of bodily resurrection is pagan and it is stupid. If you don't understand the cycle of life, you may want to go off and buy a book on biology and figure it out. It isn't possible. And beyond it not being possible, it would be stupid. Your soul is the only thing that has value. And your soul is liberated and empowered and enriched when it is free of your body. So when you die and you are among those who have listened to Yahweh and acted upon his instructions relative to the covenant and the Moed Mikre, your soul is enveloped in light and energy so that it is no longer burdened by a decaying physical body. And this enables you to travel through the universe, to enter Shamaim in the seventh dimension, to appear perfect in God's eyes, to be empowered, to be enriched, to be enabled. Just as E equals MC squared shows that energy is so much greater than is matter. So everything about Christianity, from its essence, the fact that almost everything in it is borrowed from a pagan past and comes from Babylon, it's just absurdly untrue. And there has never been a more complete and irrefutable series of books demonstrating the fact that Christianity is absolutely false, that there was no Jesus, that Paul created the myth, that Paul was demon-possessed and lied, and every quotation in the New Testament from the Torah and prophets is erroneous. It's just over. And if you read the 5 volumes of Twistianity, you won't even get through the first volume if you're a Christian. And by the time you've read all 5, there's a 0% chance that you would retain your faith in Christianity. And fortunately, I don't just take a false religion away from Christians. I provide you with the truth, which is that David is the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He is the former and returning king. And he has lived 2 lives and will live a 3rd. He came in his 2nd of 3 lives, and he was the one who was crucified in 33 CE. You see, the myth of Jesus was actually based on identity theft. It robbed Dowd of what he had achieved, and it robbed Dowd of his titles. And so I share the truth about what Dowd achieved on our behalf by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and how that extends our lives, perfects our souls, and enables us to be part of the covenant family. And at the same time, I reintroduce readers to Yahowah, who happens to be God, and explain exactly how his Torah saves. If you're up to the challenge, go to YAHOWAH.com. All 35 books are available to you for free. The entire library of the Yahowah blog is available to you for free. There's not even a donate button on the site. We wouldn't take your money if you threw it at us. We ask nothing from you. It's all given to you. What you do with it, well, will determine the fate of your soul. Now, the realization is that Yahowah, who happens to be God, has proven his existence and the legitimacy of his testimony through prophecy. And so I consistently use Yahowah's testimony as the only unassailable source of information regarding God's nature and plan throughout Twistianity. It will be and always remain the gold standard to which we will hold Paul accountable. It's only fair. Therefore, let's conclude this, the final introductory chapter into our refutation of Christianity, beginning where Christianity began, in Paul's letters, and particularly with his first, the letter to the Galatians, by giving our God, our Father, our Creator, Yahowah, the last word. This is some of what God revealed through his prophet, Yeshayah, which means freedom and salvation are from Yah. Woe, oi, the people from different races and places, these Goyim, bear blame and are guilty for having wandered away. and misled. The people's distortions and their propensity to alter, to twist, and to pervert, are numerous and burdensome, even troubling. They are descendants of those who have done wrong, harming themselves. They are children of those who corrupt and destroy. They have rejected and abandoned Yahweh. They have spurned and belittled, maligned and disparaged the set-apart one of Yisrael. They are strangers who have gone astray, having turned their backs. Yashayah, salvation is from Yahweh. Isaiah 1:4. That's devastating to Christians and to Muslims. I am Yahweh. This is my name. And the manifestation of my power I will not give to another, nor my renown and reputation to religious imagery. Yashayah 42:8. And there is the death knell for Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. You will not find Yahweh's name in their text, and Yahweh is the only name of God. Yahweh is willing, even desirous, for the sake of his sense of honesty and fairness, his commitment to doing what is right regarding your vindication, Tzedek, to reveal his empowering, enriching, and enabling Torah, his teaching and instruction, his guidance and direction, and to prove its worth and validity. Yashayah 42:21. Listen and pay attention to me so that you can respond appropriately to me, my family, and my people. To me, listen, considering and evaluating what you hear, and then respond, because indeed the Torah, this source of teaching and guidance from me, shall be brought forth and shall be disseminated, and my means to justly resolve disputes and exercise good judgment will shine upon and enlighten the family. Yashayah 51:4. That means, folks, the Torah has not been annulled. That means the Torah is not from rabbis. That means the Torah is from Yahweh, and that God's name is Yahweh, and that Torah means source of teaching and guidance, not laws. And if you want to be part of his family, you need to know that. And rather than paying attention to the Peters and the Pauls, the Marks and the Lukes, the Akibas and the Maimonides,
which is all a waste of time.
Yeah, a waste, not just a waste of time. They are demon-possessed and are adversarial. God says, listen to me. But you're not listening. If you are a practitioner or a devotee of Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, you're listening to your rabbis, to your saints, to your imams, to, the likes of demon-possessed individuals like Paul and Muhammad. Why would you do that when you can listen directly to God through his Torah and be guided to him? Good question. The religious never have an answer for that one. Then he shall reveal the glorious presence and manifestation of the power of Yahweh, and all living creatures will see together. Indeed, he is the word, the verbal spokesman and the mouth of Yahweh. By the way, this actually says that it's the Bashar herald that is the word, the verbal spokesman and mouth of Yahweh. And that would be true, but this is just one of 1,000 references to this person that Yahweh would call during the last days to awaken his people. You're listening to him. Look and see, pay attention, and behold, Yahweh, our upright one and foundation, arrives with the blast of a trumpet. He is the sacrificial lamb. He is, which is the Zeroah. He is the proverb and the parable, a picture of the word which is vivid and easy to process and see. Allah, mashal. Behold him, pay attention to him. Our recompense and fare for passage, our ransom, is associated with him. He does the work to pay our debt. to clear the way to appear in his presence. As a shepherd, he leads and protects. He feeds his flock. And as the YAHOWAH, the protective shepherd, the sacrificial lamb, he will gather his sheep, and in his chest he will lift them up, nursing, nurturing, and guiding them. Yahshua 40, 10 and 11. This is but a taste of what Yahweh revealed, not only through the prophet Yahshua, but now through Moshe and his Torah. Pertaining to these conversations, the word of Yahweh came to exist with Abram in the form of a personal, visual, and illuminating manifestation, which could be seen and experienced to say, "Do not be awed or intimidated, Abraham. I am your protector, defending you from harm, your exceedingly great reward." Genesis, which is Bereshith, beginning, 15:1. You notice it doesn't say the totality of the Godhead appeared to Abram, did it? It didn't say God himself was right there with Abraham, did it? Why? Because a being capable of creating a six-dimensional universe, which is the universe that we can witness, which is 95% less than the actual universe that exists. We see about and perceive and understand about 5% of it, what we call dark energy and dark matter, which is really an attractive force and an opposing force. A repelling force represents 95% of the total. But a being capable of creating a universe that is the three dimensions that we understand throughout this sea of galaxies, some 2 trillion galaxies, averaging a few 100 billion stars apiece. A being that enormous that could speak that into existing has to be a dimension beyond the universe that he created. And therefore, he is at least 7-dimensional to have created this 6-dimensional universe. And as a being whose dimensions are greater, for example, than the 3D realm that we perceive, he can't enter a 3D. It'd be like having Walt Disney decide that, I want to stop just drawing and writing little narratives for Mickey and Minnie Mouse. I want to actually live with them. And so it'd be like Walt Disney saying, I'm going to go from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions. And I'm going to be there in Flatland with Mickey and Minnie. It isn't possible. You need to understand that. The entirety and the enormity of God won't fit amongst the 2 trillion galaxies he created, much less in this galaxy, much less in this solar system, much less on this planet, much less in the body of a man. God can project an aspect of his nature. He can project his nephesh soul and surround it by a physical body of his choosing, but that would be God essentially reaching out like an avatar. He can project his ruach and convey his presence either as fire or as light or of something of that nature. He can convect, as this case, his word such that it becomes something that is tangible and seen in our presence. He can do those kinds of things, but this notion that all of God is somehow visible and perceivable and can be a man, that is exceedingly retarded. And God conveyed all of these words, providing perspective in our presence, saying, I am Yahweh, your God, who beneficially descended to serve, bringing you out and delivering you from the realm of the crucibles of oppression, out of the house of slavery and servitude. You will not exist with other gods in relation to my presence. Shemot, names, Exodus 20:1-3. Ever heard that before? That statement? Ever heard that statement before?
Oh, yeah.
You know what it is?
Written in stone.
It is. It's the first statement written in stone, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's been truncated again by the religious to say, I am the Lord your God. But
that's not doing it justice.
There is no Lord mentioned in it. And it actually says the following. And God, Wa Elohim, conveyed, Dabar, all of, Kol, these words, Dabar, providing perspective in our presence, saying, Amar, I am, Anki, Yahweh, your God, Elohim, who beneficially, Asher, descended to serve, bringing you out and delivering you, Yatzah, serving to remove you, liberate you, withdraw you from the realm, men eretz, of the crucibles of religious and political oppression. Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery and servitude. You will not exist, excuse me. My dog is gone back, and we're down here in the studio, and she immediately thinks she can just tear her paws to pieces, and she won't even be able to walk out of here if we didn't try to distract her from her biting. She is like a girl grown even as a woman who is a cutter. It's one of the really sad things that so many women who are insecure very often cluster bees do to themselves and degrading themselves. I have right now a cutter as a woman who was trying to slander me. She actually accused me the other day of killing her, which is odd since I have never met her, and she was alive to write the post. But nonetheless, Asher mimics these traits. It is sad because it originally emerged in her case not from the psychological problem, but from a systemic yeast infection where her paws itched and she bit them, and then now she's kind of OCD towards them. So we have to distract her attention so she doesn't hurt herself. It's part of the responsibility of, even with dogs, we parent, and it's part of our responsibility. So what you saw there was my desire to keep a beloved animal from harming herself because we enjoy her company. So Yahweh said explicitly that he is not a Lord. He is not into oppressing people. He is not into controlling anyone. He is, in fact, a liberator, removing us from servitude. And then he concludes to say, you will not exist with any other gods in relation to my presence, which means you will not exist if you believe Jesus. You will not continue to exist if you are a devotee of Hashem. You will not exist if you are an advocate of Allah. So what's written in stone is what God said. You should observe, closely examining and carefully considering this word and its message as a clearly communicated and engraved prescription of what you should do in life to live, and as an enduring and restoring witness to your children forever. Shemot 12:24. You should never add to the word which, as a blessing, I am instructing you and guiding you all, and you should never subtract from it. If you are to properly observe the terms of the covenant of Yahweh, your God, which as a favor I am instructing you. This is Devarim words 4:2. Exclusively and without exception, be observant. As your goal, pay very close attention to your soul, lest you forget and overlook the words which you have seen with your eyes, unless you are removed from your thinking. All of the days of your life, you should make them known to your children and to your children's children. The day which you were present, standing before Yahweh your God in Choreb, which Yahweh said to me to summon and assemble the family, so that I might have them hear the words which would cause them to learn, to revere and to respect and to approach me in all of the days which as a result of this relationship, they shall live on earth, and so that they might teach their children. Devarim 4-10. I'd like to remind our listeners, I said something yesterday that was profound. Might have been the day before. But what I said is that when God gave through Moshe in the 12th chapter of Devarim, the same book, Deuteronomy, the instructions on food, and both the 12th chapter and the 14th, where the message seems to be entirely different. The reason that people don't understand them, the reason that the religious and those who would assail me only listen to the list that says these things are not helpful and healthy, and ignore the statements which Yahweh repeated 4 times, you can eat anything you want, is that they don't understand the difference between your soul and your body. And I want to take this as a teaching moment to reinforce that, because it was such a profound insight then. What you consume as food has absolutely nothing to do with your soul. Your soul is actually independent of your body. Your soul can live on in Sheol or in Shamayim, or simply be extinguished. And your body is simply a repository for your soul while you're here on earth. That's it. So food will either nourish or poison your physical body. It has zero influence on your soul. And that's why God said that you can eat anything you want. And then he said, these things are good for you to eat, and these things are not, because on earth, it is important that he provide instructions on the health of our physical bodies, which means there are some things that are safe and other things that are not safe for you to eat, but that nothing you eat has any bearing on your soul, which is the only part of you that can escape this planet alive, because all bodies decay. And that is why in the midst of this text, in the 12th chapter of Devarim, where he says you can eat anything you want because it has no effect on your physical body, he says you need to pour out the blood. And the reason for that is, he says, because the blood is the life of the nephesh. Now, nepheshes are something that is a soul, it's your consciousness. They don't drink. They don't eat. They have no physical presence. And so there is no physical, tangible correlation between your nephesh and a physical liquid like blood. None. So why did Yahweh say that the blood is the life of your nephesh? It's because there is a direct correlation between blood and the survival of your soul. And that is because 2 men. The first is Dowd as the Passover lamb, shed his blood on Pesach. He was the one who was crucified in 33 CE to open the doorway to life, to prolong the days of your soul. And then it was his soul that carried our guilt into Sheol on Matzah, so that we might enjoy being part of God's covenant family on Bekurim. Then again on Teruah, 2,000 years or 40 Yobel after Dowd's sacrifice, the Bakar, the bull, the Adamah Parah, this productive man of the earth who is bloody red, Dowd's herald, Yada's Nakar, observant foreigner, will also shed his blood on Teruah as the Adamah Parah for the souls of the mortal remnant of Yisrael to be purged of their religious guilt, so they might witness Yahweh's return with Dowd and enter the 1,000-year celebration of our return to Eden on Sukkah. It is the blood that purges the soul of guilt on Pesach and Matzah, and then on Teruah. That's the facts. So that your soul is affected by those sacrifices, which is why it's poured out like water on the earth. And your body is only affected by what you eat, but your body has no value once your life has been lived on this earth. None. It is entirely limiting. It's why the Christian myth of bodily resurrection was so enormously stupid. When you're finally, this body gives out and your soul is released of this body, what you want is not to come back into another body. What you want is to be enveloped in light and energy so that you can move through the dimensions and explore the universe and inherit all that Yahowah has to give. And that is why the food story in Devarim 12 seems so different than that in Devarim 14, and why the religious freak out on thinking that their relationship with Yahowah is going to pivot on what they eat, when there is no correlation between food and the condition of your soul, only on the health of your body. And if you think you're taking your body into Shamaim and to heaven, good luck with that. A body doesn't even accompany those going to Sheol. So that's the truth, and I thought you ought to know it. And Yahowah spoke the word as God to you from the midst of the fire. Words, the sound of which you heard, a visual form you did not see, but only heard the sound coming from that fiery light. He told you all about his family-oriented covenant relationship, his bareth with you, which as a result of this relationship, Asher, he instructed and directed Shawah, you to act upon, Ashah, the 10 statements, Debar, writing them on 2 tablets of stone. And Yahowah instructed and guided me at this time that she, the set-apart spirit, would teach you regarding the clearly communicated prescriptions for living and the means to resolve disputes, even to exercise good judgment, so that you might act upon them, celebrating and profiting from them. Devarim 4, 12 through 14. Well, with the 10 statement etched in stone, there can be no Judaism because it's completely opposed to the Jewish religion. There can be no Christianity because it's completely opposed to Christianity. I mean, the first statement says you can't exist with a God other than Yahowah, and Christians have their Jesus. Jews have their Hashem. Muslims have Allah. You can't exist with another God. You can't exist if your God is a Lord, because Yahowah is a freedom fighter, a liberator. The second statement says, don't be religious. I told you, don't be religious. Let me remind you, don't be religious. It goes over and over again to say, don't even be in the proximity of anything that could be perceived as religious. The third statement says, any negation of my name, Yahowah, is an unforgivable crime. And that guilt will never be resolved. And yet, guess what name doesn't appear in the Talmud, in the New Testament, or in the Quran? Yahowah's. So you cannot claim that you have a religion that is somehow endorsed by the God of the Old Testament, who scribed the 10 statements in stone and delivered them on behalf of his Bereth covenant, and be a Christian, practice Judaism, or be a Muslim, unless you're brain dead. Now, I know they call it faith. They don't call it knowing. And as faith, you can believe any nonsense you want to. It's just stupid to do so when there is absolutely no validity behind what you're believing. As for the fire, that was the light that Yahowah used to convey his nature. It is because as spirit, Yahowah is the closest thing to light and energy in our midst. That's why he equated himself to light in the first chapter of Bereshith in the Torah. Yahowah is the closest thing we can understand to Yahowah's light. And that's brilliant because light, of course, was the first thing created in the universe. He gave us part of himself, if you will. It didn't become matter until quarks confined and it cooled to the point where matter, which is nothing more than a diminished and organized form of energy, could form. That's when time actually began to flow. So by being light and using Einstein's E equals mc squared, we know that Yahowah is essentially the speed of light times the speed of light, greater than any accumulation of matter, and that these things are related. We also know that on a photon of light, that time simply exists. The fullness of time exists, which means as a energy-based being, Yahowah was capable of seeing our future in our past and reporting what would happen to us before it happens. Therefore, he is reporting future history as opposed to predicting anything. That's the reason why he gets 100% of his prophecies correct. And on a photon of light simply exists through all time, making God, and when he transitions us through this fire, transforming our physical nature into spiritual, energy-based light, that we too will be eternal. Light also is on a photon of light. While there is this perception from our Earth place and space and time that it would take 96 light years to travel from one edge of the known universe to another, that really isn't true. And the reason that's not true is that because on a photon of light, time simply is. And because time doesn't flow as we measure it, the length of time to go from one edge to the other edge of the universe would be no time at all. And it doesn't even matter how fast you're traveling if no time passes while you're traveling. And so you all will be able to go and explore the universe in no time or in all time, or you can get from one place to another in the blink of an eye and then spend as much time there as you wish, because time will be something you can maneuver in as a dimension. So these are all important insights as to why Yahowah referred to himself and revealed himself with words and light, in this fiery light with words, the sound of which you heard, the visual form you did not see. Isn't that a beautiful explanation? And it was all to reveal the single most important thing to God, and it should be to us, the Bereth covenant, this family relationship that he is establishing, and how that is conveyed through not only the Torah, but through the inscriptions that Yahowah has made available to us, and in particular the 10 statements that he etched in stone. During the time of adversity and distress, all of these words will find you, especially those in the last days, and then you will return and you will be restored forever and eternally to Yahowah, your God. It's amazing that this is in the 4th chapter of Devarim 30, because that was written 3,450 years ago. And it is about the 8 years we are about to experience. It is only during the time of Israel's troubles that we will finally be able to witness a significant number of Israelites and Yehudim returning to Yahowah. They will realize that their rabbis have defrauded them, that their politicians have misled them, that their IDF can no longer protect them, that the world is against them, and the only alternative is Yahowah. And the name of the God whom they would never speak will all of a sudden be on their lips. And Yahowah will bring all of those who are eligible into Jerusalem for the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who will be a productive bull at that moment, to purge them of their guilt so they might be restored and live forever with your God. All of this is explained in the books of YAHOWah. All of this is presented in the Yahowah blog for your edification. But to capitalize. You need to recognize that Yahowah has a very specific plan for your restoration. And before you can avail yourselves of it, you have to denounce all forms of religion, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, even the religions of man like progressivism and Marxism and communism, today MAGA-ism. You need to recognize that God is anti-political and anti-religious, and the first condition of the covenant is to distance yourselves from these things, and then to approach him, knowing that Yahowah alone is God, and that his directions to him appear in his Torah teaching. This was from Devarim, words, Deuteronomy 4:30. From the heavens he has individually and deliberately prepared you to listen to his voice for the explicit purpose of instructing you. And upon the Almighty's earth he enabled you to see and to witness his magnificent light. And his words, which you heard from the midst of the fire, underline this is his love for your fathers. He has chosen to favor their descendants after them. He has descended to serve, leading you into his presence with his power, away from the crucibles of human oppression. And that would be Devarim 4:36 and 37. That's the summation of why they were there. Unfortunately, they chose not to listen. You should recognize and acknowledge this day, returning your heart and thinking to God, because indeed, Yahowah, he is Almighty God in the heavens and above the earth and below. There is no other. You should observe, closely examining and carefully considering his clearly communicated and inscribed prescriptions of what you should do in life to be cut into this relationship, along with the terms and conditions of his binding contract, which relationally I have instructed and guided you this day. Because as a result of the relationship, he is good to you and beneficial for you, and also for your children after you, for the purpose of elongating your days. Devarim 4:39 and 40. And it would have been true had they listened, but they didn't. They rejected Moshe. They rejected the Torah. They rejected Yahowah, all the way to the extent of telling God to go away, to shut up. They never wanted to see him or hear from him again. This is the Torah, the teaching, the guidance, which beneficially he placed before Moshe and the Beni Yisrael who engaged in endure with God. This is the enduring witness and restoring testimony, the clearly communicated prescriptions, the means to use, to think, to clearly process the information and exercise good judgment, which God spoke to Moshe and to the children of Israel when he led them away from the crucibles of religious and political oppression in Mitzrayim. Devarim 4:44 and 45. These are the terms and conditions of the relationship agreement, the clearly communicated prescriptions of what you should do in life to live, and the means to exercise good judgment, to resolve disputes, mishvat, joke, mitzvah, which beneficially Asher, Yahowah, your God, instructed and guided you to learn and to teach, which should be done, which should be acted upon and engaged in the realm into which you all are going to pass over into as an inheritance. The intent is so that you can come to revere and respect Yahowah, your God, by observing all of his clearly communicated prescriptions of what you should do in life to live, Juka, and his terms and conditions, mitzvah, which I have instructed you individually, your children and your children's children, all of the days of your lives. It is for the purpose of elongating your days, so that you listen, Israel, And so that you are focused and observant, thereby acting upon that which relationally is good and beneficial for you, which beneficially will cause you to substantially increase, grow dramatically, and become exceedingly great and empowered, consistent with that which Yahowah, your God, promised and affirmed to your fathers on your behalf. Israel, individuals who engage and endure with God, listen and hear. Yahowah, your God. Yahowah is one. You should choose to truly love Yahowah, your God, with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your capacity and capability. These words which I am guiding you with this day, they should come to exist and always be part of your thinking. Your goal should be to choose to teach them by reciting them to your children. And you should consistently speak about them during your life and inside of your home and with your family. And as you walk, traveling through life and along the path, and when you lie down to rest and when you stand up, and you should choose to fasten them as a sign upon your hand, influencing your actions, and they should come to exist between your eyes, influencing your perspective. And you should write them upon the door frames of your home and upon your gates. Devarim 6, 1 through 9. He didn't say, put a box on your forearm and put another box on your forehead and then tag a mezuzah to your doorpost. This is symbolic. If you can't think it through, Israel, stop being stupid. He's giving you these instructions to provide perspective, to provide motivation that influences what you do, what you perceive, to influence how you live within your homes and as part of a Bayeth family, as part of your community. And instead, rather than letting these Torah instructions influence you, you put them inside of boxes and sought to be religious and discounted the relationship that was being offered to you. Indeed, you should listen. You should shama. It doesn't say you should babble. It doesn't say you should pray. It says you should listen. It doesn't say you should overwrite what God is saying. It says you should listen to the voice and invitation of Yahowah, your God. It doesn't say the Lord your God. It doesn't say Adonai your God. It doesn't say Hashem your God. It doesn't say Jesus your God. It doesn't say Allah your God. It says Yahowah your God. You and all of the religious buffoons before you had absolutely no right or authority to remove Yahowah's name from his testimony. Doing so is in direct opposition to what God wrote in the third statement, where he said that that is absolutely and completely unforgivable throughout time. Yahowah your God, for the purpose of approaching by examining and considering. Shama and Shamar. Shama is to listen. Shamar is to closely examine and carefully consider. The instructive terms and conditions of his relationship agreement, mitzvah, and his clearly communicated prescriptions and inscribed recommendations of what you do in this life to live, chukah, which are inscribed and permanently memorialized, la kathab, written, not oral, of this Torah, teaching, guidance, directions, and instructions. It's from the verb yara, which means exactly those things. There isn't even the hint of laws or even a word for obey in the Hebrew language. Torah means to teach and to guide. And that is because you will return and be restored, shub, to Yahowah, your God, with all of your heart and with all of your soul. Unfortunately, it would take 3,470 years before that would occur. Because in the intervening time, Jews turned the relationship into a debilitating religion. And you will return with your soul, your nephesh, not with your bodies. For indeed, the empowering and enriching word of your God facilitates your approach and brings you near when ingrained in your speech, when placed in your heart to engage with him. Devarim 30:14. And it came to be that just when Moshe finished writing down the words of the Torah, upon this the Almighty's written scroll, successfully completing the eternal witness and restoring testimony, Moshe instructed the Loe lifting up and carrying Yahweh's ark of the family-oriented covenant relationship, saying, accept and grasp hold of the written scroll of the Torah and place this alongside Yahweh's ark of the covenant relationship. Do you see the connection? The Ark of the Covenant not only carried the 2 tablets that Yahweh etched in stone, which are so astonishingly anti-religious. That Ark of the Covenant represents this covenant relationship, this family relationship that Yahweh is establishing with us. And the top of that Ark of the Covenant is the mercy seat. It's the Kapporeth. It's the very place that God's beloved Son, our King, will use as his throne. It is returning as brilliant as the sun in Yahweh's presence. It is that Kapporeth, that mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, that dowed upon his return on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, in year 6000 Yah, sunset, 6:22 p.m., October 2nd, 2033, that he will anoint that mercy seat with the blood of the bull, restoring the souls of all Yisrael in the process. Do you see the connection? And what is it that is beside the Ark of the Covenant, which exists today and will be brought out for all to see within the next 8 years? What exists beside it? What is the map to it? The Torah.
The Torah.
The written scroll of the Torah, the original autograph of the Torah. It continues to exist right beside the Ark of the Covenant. And we're going to see both. This scroll that Yahweh had Moshe inscribe for his people in the world will all be displayed for all to see, along with the very Ark of the Covenant. All of it foretold upon his return to anoint, in harmony with the Torah's instructions regarding the day of reconciliation, Yom Kippur. You see how beautiful the whole picture comes together. This is the means to the restoration of the covenant that Yahweh has offered. Your God, he will always exist there. Where? The Ark of the Covenant. Where? Scroll of the Torah. For you. In the enduring witness and restoring testimony. Devarim 31, 24 through 26. So just being reasonable. Not that many people are today. What do you think the likelihood that Yahweh said so much about the importance of his Torah teaching and guidance, and of his Ark of the Covenant, and the contents of it, and the importance that we apply observing it and listening to it? If his intent was to do away with it, with an oral law that became the Talmud, with a bunch of absurd letters that became the New Testament that annuls it, or the Quran that is nothing but a suicidal mess. The Quran is nothing but a bastardized version of the Talmud. Why would God speak so vociferously, so eternally, so restoratively, so instructionally, providing guidance regarding the importance of the Torah in your lives, if his intent was to annul them through these other religious texts? I like probability. But I grew up in the era before calculators. And so I know how to do numbers in my head. And I realize that the probability that the Christian New Testament, the Talmud or the Quran or the Zohar are true based upon these statements we have just read from Yahowah is 0. Now, you may not like evidence and reason. You may be among those who says, I will plug this into my AI chat box. I will find out what AI thinks. AI doesn't think. AI is as lame for you as the calculator was to the generation that followed me in school, depriving you of thinking. It is nothing but a crutch. It's not intelligent. It cannot exercise good judgment. It can simply search the statements that men have made and form a consensus and said, well, if most people today are saying that Christianity is true, it must be true. If most people are saying that Jesus existed, well, then Jesus must have existed. If they say that the Torah was replaced, well, then must it have been. If the Jews say the Torah means law, then maybe it is law. That's all it can do, is regurgitate what has become common, because all it does is search things like Expedia and other publications so that it can out what you ask it to give you, because you've lost the ability to do your own research. You've lost the ability to think, and it's only going to get worse. So if you don't respond to this opportunity using your eyes, using your ears, using your mind, it's going to be too late, because first of all, we're running out of time. And second of all, this crutch of AI is going to cripple what's left of judgmental thinking on this planet. In his next book, one scribed by Yosha, that is Yosha ben Nun, Yahowah introduced the living embodiment of his purpose by name. Therefore, it says later, therefore, Yahowah delivers and saves. Yosha recited and proclaimed all of the words of the Torah. That's where he began his relationship and his mission, by reciting the words of the Torah, the blessings of peace and prosperity, and also the slights and denunciations. You see, to guide children, you need to tell them what's positive for you to do and what is negative for you to do. The Torah denounces religion. It says, do not be religious. It says, instead, choose this relationship with Yahowah by listening to his Torah instructions. Just as all of these things were written in the written scroll of the Torah teaching and guidance, not in an oral Talmud. There did not exist a word from all that which beneficially Moshe had instructed and directed, which to reveal the way to get the most out of the relationship. Yosha did not read, recite, or proclaim in a straightforward manner in the presence of the entire assembled community of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, including the women and the little children, as well as the foreigners from other races and places who were walking among them. Yosha, Yahowah saves, Joshua 8:34 and 35. Then Yosha wrote these words in God's Torah. Now that we have heard from Yahowah through his prophet Yeshayah, his co-worker Moshe, and his heir apparent Yosha ben Nun, let's consider what God inspired Dowd, the man errantly known as David, to reveal in one of his songs. This is especially poignant because Dowd is Yahowah's Messiah. his shepherd and king. Dowd is God's son, our Savior, and the man who will be returning soon. He wrote, on behalf of the eternal leader, a song of Dowd the beloved. The heavens quietly quantify the unit of measure, exactly and accurately, of the manifestation of power of God. Its spreading out and expanse makes conspicuous his handiwork. Day unto day pours out answers, and night unto night reveals knowledge which leads to understanding. Did you process the correlation between this and what I said at the beginning of the program? That a being that can create a universe of 2 trillion galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars apiece cannot be in the thing that he creates. It is not possible. God has to be a dimension beyond what he created. Therefore, God cannot diminish himself to being three-dimensional. God cannot be a man. And if you want to understand the magnitude of God, come to appreciate the magnitude of the universe and understand that he spoke it into existence from another dimension. And understand that the very nature of light as it defines time, and how time is then the essence of prophecy, and light is the essence of enlightenment, and all that this reveals about what we are ultimately inheriting when we become his children. And all of this leads to understanding. Nothing exists, Dowd wrote, without the word. Yahowah literally spoke the universe into existence. Nothing exists when and where the spoken and written word of the voice which calls out is corrupted or negated, ceasing to be heard. This is both historic and prophetic. Had Yahowah not spoken the universe into existence with words, it would not exist. If the voice of the one that Yahowah has chosen to convey this to you is negated, the earth certainly and much of the universe will be destroyed. It will have served no purpose. His going forth is from the uttermost part of the spiritual realm. He exists in a dimension beyond the universe that you're observing. His arrivals are unto the distant ends of time. He came and visited us, at least a diminished aspect of himself, in the garden. And he will return, at least with the diminished aspect of himself, to be with us as we return to the garden, 6,000 years apart. The distant ends of time from our perspective and our relationship with God. And nothing is hidden from his light. There's nothing that he can't know. Yahowah's Torah teaching, his guidance, is complete and entirely perfect, returning, restoring, and transforming Shub, the Nephesh soul. Do you get it? God, throughout the Torah and the prophets, says that he will Shub, return to us, when we Shub, return to him. And at this point, there are maybe 1,000 people amongst the 8 billion that live on this planet that have done so. And it isn't our bodies that he's interested in, but our Nephesh souls. And that's the part of us that can Shub to Yahowah. And we do it through his Torah teaching and guidance, recognizing that it is complete and perfect for returning, restoring, and transforming the soul. And that means that Judaism is wrong, Christianity is wrong, Islam is wrong. Yahowah's enduring testimony and restoring witness, his Hiduth, is trustworthy and reliable, verifiable and dependable, making understanding simple for the open-minded. And while that's true of Yahowah's Torah, Well, that's true of Dowd's Mizmor, this song that he wrote. It is also true of the one that Yahowah has chosen, the Eduth, the restoring witness that Yahowah has chosen to convey this message to you. I am making it simple for you to understand, should you be open-minded. The first to do that in 2,500 years. Yahowah's directions, his Pakudim, are right. Yachar. They're correct, causing the heart to rejoice, the mind to soar. Yahowah's terms and conditions of the relationship, his mitzvah, are moral and they are purifying, shining a light towards understanding. They are light. Revering and respecting Yahowah is cleansing and restoring, sustaining and establishing us forevermore. The means to exercise good judgment and to resolve disputes. This is your last chance because AI is being used now to preclude people from thinking. You need to mishpat. You understand that mishpat is a compound of two very important Hebrew concepts. One is to meh, which is to ponder the implications of something. And that something is shafat, which is to decide, to exercise good judgment, to examine the evidence and process it rationally and reasonably, to deduce an intelligent conclusion. That is being forfeited today. You're on your last breath of this opportunity to mishpat Yahowah. The means to exercise good judgment and resolve disputes of Yahowah. They are trustworthy and they are reliable. Emeth. They are wholly vindicating and correct. Sadak. Nothing matters with Yahowah more than being Sadak. Dowd was Sadak. You need to be right. You need to be correct to be vindicated. Believing is useless. You must know and understand. And what you know and understand needs to be correct. Mizmor 19, 6 through 9. That which we have heard, Shama, and we have come to know, Yada. Our fathers communicated to us in writing, La Shafar, not in oral Torahs. These things were not concealed from their children, from one generation to the next or to the last. The truth has always been available, just that no one's paid attention to it. They recounted and they recorded Yahowah's glorious love songs, his power and influence, and his wonderful and astounding things, which as a result of the relationship, he has done and will continue to do. He took a stand to establish an enduring witness to this restoring testimony, the Eduth, with Jacob bringing about the Torah, with Yisrael, which to benefit from the relationship, he instructed and directed our fathers to make it known to Yada, to their children. He did so for the express purpose that the next, as well as the last generation, would come to know Yada, to understand, to comprehend, to process the evidence and become familiar with those conclusions to Yada. Or may I say, to Yada, Yahowah. These children will have children who rise up and take a stand. They will proclaim this to their children, and they will place it in. He will place this in them, and they will trust and rely upon God. This will happen just under 8 years from now. The Torah will be written into the remnant of Yisrael, and God's restoring witness will lead a a group of covenant members whose job will be to teach this remnant what they need to know to become covenant. And they will have children, and their children will have children, and God will get the full extent of the family that he has always wanted, but with a fresh start, as we're all brought back to the conditions experienced during Eden. They will neither forget nor improperly respond to God's work. And so the terms and conditions of this relationship agreement, this mitzvah, will save them. And that's our. They will not be like their fathers, a generation too stubborn to change, and a generation who was defiantly rebellious and embittered, Marah, whose hearts were not prepared and which were not nurtured by God's Spirit. It is Yahowah who put the 7 spirits of himself in the choder to deliver this message to you, and so that you can be nurtured by these words, so that you, unlike the generations of Jews and even Goyim during this 3,450 years since the Torah was revealed, that you will not be like them and be ill-prepared. You will not be, in the end, rebellious and embittered, as are all religious people relative to God today. Don't be so stubborn you won't change. Don't be like the generations that have preceded this one. This is your last chance. Stop being stiff-necked. Stop being obstinate. Stop being Marah, rebellious and embittered. Allow your mind and your soul to be nurtured by Yahweh's Spirit, his Ruach. The children of the northern kingdom submitted, and they yielded to those who betrayed them. And they were overthrown and destroyed. In the day of the battle, as it was waged, they did not observe the covenant relationship with God. And with regard to his Torah teaching and guidance, they resisted, and they refused to walk. Mizmor Psalm 78, 3-10. Yahweh, make known to me, Yada, your ways. Teach me your path. Direct me to walk by trusting and relying upon you. Teach me, because indeed you are the God of my salvation. Yasha, with you I confidently anticipate deliverance every day. Yahweh, remember and invoke your mercy and your steadfast love, even your unfailing kindness and favoritism, for indeed they are from time immemorial. The guilt of my youth and rebellion do not remember, as your love for me is remembered, on account of your goodness and generosity and productivity and agreeable nature. Yahweh. Yahweh, Almighty, is good, beneficial, and generous, and always right. Therefore, he is the source of teaching and instruction, and he guides and directs Yara, the root of Torah. Sinners, those who are guilty of having missed the way, along the way. He enables the way of the unpretentious and sincere who respond and answer his call, Anah. If I were to render this today, I would go directly to the verbal root, which is Anah, written with a hey, and the noun form, well, the Anah is, the verb would be Anah. Well, Anah is, with a wa, is a derivative of it. The reason is that Anah means to respond, to answer, to reply. There is nothing that is unpretentious or severe or sincere regarding this. That is a corruption that if you were just to look at the Hebrew lexicons, you would say, oh yeah, wow, man, it must mean unpretentious and severe. No, it doesn't. Take the time to look at the verbal root of the word. Every lexicon will take you directly to it if you can't figure it out yourself. Anah is from anah, and it means to respond, to be responsive. He enables the way of those who are responsive, who answer his call, with his means to make rational decisions and resolve disputes. Mishpat again, for those who ponder, exercising good judgment. He provides the information to teach, lamad. Those who anah, respond to his way. This is so clear, so simple, so direct, so irrefutable. Why is there a single person who is religious on the planet? All of the mannerisms and conduct of Yahowah are merciful and beyond reproach, and they are trustworthy. They are reliable for those who are preserved by and saved by his covenant relationship and by his enduring witness, his idah, his restoring witness. As a result of your name, Shem, Yahowah, you will choose to overlook my rebellion, because indeed he is great. All of what we have ever done contrary to Yahowah's instructions was carried away by Dowd. So since he carried our guilt with his nephesh soul into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again, it will be overlooked. Hence, whatever individual respects and reveres Yahowah, he will teach him in the way that he should choose his soul, his nephesh, in the most favorable, pleasing, and festive circumstances. Surrounded in light and energy, he will dwell and endure, and his descendants will inherit the realm. A very close and intimate fellowship with Yahowah is certain for those who respect and revere him, because his family-oriented covenant relationships he makes known to him through Yada. My eyes will continually be upon Yahowah, because indeed he himself will come, removing the restraints from my feet, turning me around and preparing me to have mercy and favor on me as a unique child. And I am ani, responsive. As a result of Yahowah, the steps of each individual are prepared and firmly established, and his way is pleasurable. And it's a wonderful, enjoyable experience. Indeed, though he may fall, he's not going to be cast down. Indeed, Yahowah is sustaining, upholding him with his hand. If you're going to serve Yahowah, if you're going to work with Yahowah, you will fall. Absolutely. And without any doubt. Moshe did. Abraham did. Dowd did. And it is by falling that we learn we can rely on what Yahowah has instilled in us, because we can get back up. We can learn from the experience. We can be more confident as we go forward, having overcome that obstacle, having cleared it from the way, having started fresh and anew. Holding Yahowah's hand, we can overcome any stumble, and we should not be afraid to go out and occasionally stumble, because it is how we respond to this that builds our character, refines our soul, makes us worthwhile, makes us interesting. Every day, he is merciful and compassionate, accompanying his children, kneeling down in love to lift them up, blessing them. And so I encourage you to consider and act upon and engage in that which is good, beneficial and agreeable, productive and pleasing Tob as a result, and live forevermore. For indeed, Yahweh loves good judgment, the process of evaluating evidence so as to render a just and fair verdict, which resolves disputes, misfat again. So he will not abandon, azab, separate from those who steadfastly seek his protection. Throughout eternity, they will be watched over and cared for. Just as Yahweh asks us to shamar, he too is observant. But the offspring, the zerah of the wicked, of those who are wrong, they will be cut off, karat. The upright who are correct and thus vindicated, Sadak, will inherit Yaresh, the realm, and they will live, Sakan, forever within it. The mouths of those who are right, Shadak, passionately and boldly proclaim wisdom, providing the capacity to understand. Chakama. Chakama is this ability to intellectually encapsulate what you are seeing, what you are hearing, so that you process this information intelligently and can deduce reasoned conclusions. And their tongue speaks the word of good judgment, of justly resolving disputes. Mishpat, yet again, the pondering of the process of exercising good judgment. The Torah teaching, the Torah, the directions, the guidance of his God is in his heart, therefore in his mind, processing what he judges to be true, providing his motivation and inclination. So his steps will never waver. Even if we trip up, we never waver. We stay the course. We are resolute. We are steadfast. We are devoted. We know the path to Yahweh. We convey it. We walk it. We live it every day. Mizmor Psalm 37, 23 through 31. Of course, that was beautiful. So now returning to his Torah, we discover there is one engraved prescription for living, Chukah, for all of you to approach, for the assembled community, and for those from different races and places, one Torah. The clearly communicated and inscribed prescription for living together is everlasting and eternal, and for all your generations. It is exactly the same for you as the foreigner and the newcomer, the ger. This was, this is, and this will always exist as the means to approach the very presence of Yahweh. One Torah, one source of teaching and guidance, and one means to think clearly and resolve disputes. Misfat again, shall continually exist, Haya, the basis of Yahweh's name, for you to approach, for the newcomers from different races and places to approach, La Ha Ger, with you, all living together, Gur, with this foreigner in your midst. Bamidbar, in the wilderness, Numbers 15 and 16. Oh boy, too. Numbers 15 is one of the greatest chapters ever written. It is prophetic of God's entire plan of reconciliation and redemption. I have shared it on previous episodes of the Yahowah vlog. There are very few things as prophetically profound as the whole of Bamidbar, Numbers 15. Since Yahweh has clarified how we are to approach him, the only thing which remains to question is what Shaul said regarding replacing the means that God has provided as opposites for Yahweh to be right Paul, and therefore Christianity must be wrong. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you for spending this time with us.